Today's show is brought to you by Southpaw Customs. Southpaw Customs is the official apparel brand of the Rachel Run Show. Southpaw Customs also designs and prints one-of-a-kind shirts, hoodies, and tumblers for large and small orders for businesses and individual orders. Visit spcustoms6.com. That's www.spcustoms6.com and tell Erica Rachel sent you. Also, make sure you help the show and purchase your official Rachel Runs gear by visiting www.spcustoms6.com and click on the Rachel Runs link. The Rachel Runs podcast is also brought to you by EBR Studio out of Feasterville, Pennsylvania. EBR Studio focuses on weddings, events, portrait, and product photography. EBR Studio is also the master at doing promo shoots and ad campaigns. I'm talking to you businesses and influencers. They are published worldwide, I know, because I've been on a few covers. If you have a wedding or event coming up, or if you're in the market for portraits or promo shots, go to www.ebrstudio.com. That's www.ebrstudio.com. Tell Bill Rachel sent you. EBR Studio is my official photographer and the official photographer of the Rachel Runs Show. As you know, we're all about health and wellness here. I have a great new product for you. You've probably heard of it and seen it on Instagram. It's called Liquid IV. I've actually been using it for years, back when they were a smaller company. Now I'm blessed enough to be working with them. If you haven't tried it before, it is a great add-in to your water that you just mix with your water bottle. And one water bottle with one packet of Liquid IV, just one packet, is like drinking 3 water bottles. So it really is a hydration multiplier. This is fantastic for runners, athletes, and anybody that works out. Mix it in your water bottle before you go to the gym. Use it on your long runs, and runners in the summertime, this stuff is great. Now, best part is they've given me a really, really good promo code. All caps, Rachel_runs will get you not only 25% off your whole order, but free shipping. I don't know about you guys, but free shipping is like a big thing of mine with online shopping. So make sure you use my promo code, all caps, Rachel_runs. It's the same as my Instagram handle, and you will get 25% off and free shipping on your Liquid IV order.
T-minus 60 seconds and counting. Coming up on a go for all the sequence start. T-minus 17 seconds and counting. 15, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, start, 2, 1, boost ignition, and liftoff.
I can't go to Taco Bell. I'm on an all-carb diet. God, Karen, you are so stupid.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Rachel Runs. And this week's episode is part 2 of interview with ultra runner and Alaskan badass Michele Harmeling. Good evening, Michele. Thank you again for coming back and giving us some more ultra running scoop.
Yeah, of course.
So last week we left off talking about fueling for ultra running and how, different things work for different people. And I think a lot of it is testing out what works for you because, I'm 10 years into running and still learning what my body likes and doesn't like. I don't know if you're the same. It's a really long learning process.
It's a constant shift and a constant adaptation. I think a lot of it is the weather that you're racing in, just your overall fitness level and your health at that time. And you just gotta kind of roll with it. I mean, you don't always know what your body's not gonna like either. So if your body doesn't like something, you can kind of be ready to shift gears pretty rapidly. So I'm always learning something.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's trial and error, and that's, the motivation to keep, trying and keep picking different races. You're going to have bad ones. I think we've all been there with bad ones and, but not using it as feeling discouraged, but trying to take what you can and learn from it and trying something else out on the next one. Now, speaking of food and fuel, you have a very, very unique hobby, one that I never really even considered, foraging. Please, please explain to us what that means and how on earth you got started in that.
Well, I grew up here. We have a really large family, and so something up here that I think is unique compared to elsewhere in the States is that we do a lot of what's called subsistence, hunting, fishing, berry picking, all kinds of things, and yes, foraging for things in the woods. Alaska has a really robust subsistence program, meaning that you can get a permit to hunt or fish a fairly substantial amount of things from the ocean, salmon, halibut, that kind of thing, or multiple times a year for like big game and things like that. You pay a tiny fee for those permits, and all you really have to do is prove that you're using that to make up the bulk of your family's diet. So, we did that growing up. We would go fishing, 7, 8 times a year, fill the freezer up, and a lot of that involved plants and berries and things that you can pick out of the woods and eat them without dying. I feel like it's
Well,
kind
you
of
actually teach a class, don't you? And what's it called?
I do, yeah. And usually it's geared towards like homeschool kids, which is where the title comes from because it has to be catchy for them. So I call it "Can I eat this or will it kill me?" Just yeah, it's
I feel like
basically
it's also that's pretty applicable. Like I would be interested in that because, I mean, quite literally, what kinds of things can we eat that won't kill us?
they more than you think. I think people tend to be a little bit gun shy about picking even things that they think that they're familiar with. They second guess themselves, and it varies by region. So what you all have over there on your side of the country is going to be far different from what we have here. And so a lot of what I teach is just how to identify things that are a really safe, sure bet, and what to do with them, how to make them tasty.
And have you actually applied this during like any of your ultra running, like actually grabbing things that are out there?
Yeah, so there's a group up here called Chugach Run Team. And there's also a race called Day at the Beach, which is neither during the day nor at an actual beach. It is overnight at a place called Beach Lake. Nobody knows why they named it that, which is this tiny little sort of like alpine lake in the mountains. There's no beach about it. So it's a day at the beach run by the Chugach Run Team, which is my buddy Marty, his wife Laura, and then a bunch of my friends. So at that race one year, I was just kind of like, okay, what I was like, it's fall time. All the good stuff's out. All the berries are out. And fall time up here, which it is most places, is also prime mushroom picking season. So I am somewhat notorious for not being able to leave the mushrooms where they are if I find them. So it's a lap race. It's about a 4.5 mile loop. And so I just decided that every loop I was going to pick as many mushrooms as I could like carry safely. And then I was like piling them on this table. So I gave them
You are
all.
that mushroom lady. Oh my goodness.
I gave them all to Marty, and was like, "Here, you should," because he's a chef. I was like, "Here you go. You should like eat these." So Chugach Run Team also, and Marty in particular, gives his friends trail names. So the next time I saw him after that race, he was like, "I figured out what your trail name is," and I was like, what is it? Like, I was expecting something like innocuous and kind of like cutesy. He was like, your trail name is Boomer. And I was like, what? He's like, like the 70s, like boomers are mushrooms. And I was like, oh my God. So it's sort of stuck. So that is apparently my MO with that particular run group. But I tend to do that anyway. Like if I see something edible, I go on mushroom runs. I take my friends, bring a backpack. We go run around in the woods and pick mushrooms and bring them home. It's
See,
just
I
fun.
don't even know if that would be a thing here. I guess it has a lot to do with, the terrain of where you live and what's
Yeah.
available to you, but I've never even given it a second thought, probably because I didn't grow up like, hunting for food and things like that. But it is really resourceful. resourceful and probably a good skill to know. I mean, none of us ever thought we'd be living through a pandemic in the last year, so Lord only knows what's going to happen in the future. It might not be the worst idea to know what you can eat in the wild.
I think you'll find with the pandemic, a lot of people taking up like kind of interesting hobbies, and that's definitely one of them. I would think is plant identification, berries and birds and animal tracks and all kinds of things. And it's definitely taken off up here. I think you also see a lot more focus on just sort of living off the land in general. It's always interesting to scroll through my Instagram feed because it's like half running and the other half is sort of like all things about food and farm to table and, mushroom hunting.
It's a healthier way to do things. I mean, most of the stuff we buy at the grocery store, aside from, literally fresh things, it's all processed and packaged, and you're not sure where it's coming from. I've actually gotten pickier with the meat that I eat now as an adult. Like, I prefer things that are grass fed or ordering it from, companies that I know, are farm to table. Because, I mean, everything that's available to us these days isn't as healthy. So there might be something said, to be said for kind of getting back to our roots, so to speak, as far as the way we eat. And I'm just fascinated because I don't think I've ever met anybody that, goes on mushroom runs or, because they don't teach that. At least when I was in school, they didn't teach us anything about like, identifying what's safe to eat. Most of the time I was told growing up not to touch that or, that none of
Yeah.
it was safe.
I think a lot of it for me is that aspect of it too, is just, not being afraid of your surroundings, not being afraid to try things. I think that's definitely something. I have my son, and then my boyfriend has his 3 boys, and we try to take them out and send them off, into the wilderness, and they're learning to identify things and learning how to use them, and you can kind of pass that on, just to not be afraid of what's out there, and to trust your memory, trust what you've learned, and use it.
I think that's probably another quality of runners is not necessarily that we aren't afraid of things, but overcoming fears and self doubts. I mean, that's pretty much my outlet for overcoming, all my doubts, anxieties, and worries is running, um, and leaning on it during particularly hard times in life. And I know that you especially have used running to get you through difficult times in life. I mean, we're both survivors of divorce, and I don't talk about mine publicly very much, especially not on Instagram or not on the podcast at all. So far, most of my loved ones didn't even know it was happening. But running was certainly there for me during that time, and you lean into it, and you've had the same experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think this will probably resonate with lots of people, even people who are not divorced, as you just kind of find yourself in these situations and relationships where um, you sort of get up one day and look at yourself in the mirror, and you don't recognize that person, and you don't know who that person is anymore, and you don't particularly like that person, and certainly for me, to be able to step out the door, even if it was for a mile, and it wasn't what I wanted to do that day, and I was just having a very depressive episode or a very sort of like low moment, and I made myself do it anyway, it just became all the more important because I think, when we're in these relationships that are very difficult, and the relationship doesn't serve us anymore, and we start to sort of spiral down into, just self-doubt too. It's usually because somebody's telling us what we're not, or somebody's telling us what we can't do, and somebody is like hammering it home day after day that we are not what they want and not living up to their expectations. And that becomes the most important thing, right? Is like prove to this other person when really you should just be proving to yourself that you can do these things. And so for me, it was definitely proving to myself that there was still something that I could do, even if I was doing it very slowly and I was sucking at it and I was, just feeling like I wasn't a great runner. Like, it became sort of the one thing that I had, and I definitely think that it also reflects, we just don't feel like grounded in our bodies at times like that. We don't feel healthy. We don't feel safe.
No.
I did not feel safe at all ever in my marriage. And I had my son, and like being pregnant is this whole other thing. Like women say they feel like houses. I am not tall enough to feel like a house. So I don't know what I felt like. It was definitely not that. It was sort of like the small compact version, something very dense and like immovable. Um, and then everything is screwball because your hormones are screwball and all this kind of thing. Those situations find us feeling very just disconnected. You feel like you can't move. You feel like you cannot leave your house because everybody like is watching you and everybody knows that you are failing and you are screwing up and everybody is watching you. And so running really was a way to go do that thing anyway. And I definitely still, for a long time after my divorce felt that way. Like everybody was just like watching me. Like everybody knew what happened and everybody was kind of like whispering behind their hands. You feel like that a lot.
Even when you're
And
not
just
the cause of it. And certainly in your case, absolutely not. It doesn't matter. You feel such shame and embarrassment, and you don't want to
yeah,
tell people what happened. But everybody knows, and like you said, everybody seems to be watching and in your business. And running is like that one thing that is yours that nobody can
yeah,
take away, and it gives you a sense of empowerment. And in some ways, it also gave me value. Not that my
yeah.
value was wrapped up in running, but it gave me something each day that was mine and that felt worth it and important to me.
And you have to have something outside of yourself and you have to have some place to go. And so I was running, around the neighborhood, or I would go out on these trails and there wasn't anybody there. And I'm sure that you've done this too. There were definitely times where it was like, make it half a mile, sit down and cry, make it another half a mile, sit down and cry. Like it was very cathartic, but it was also, yes, it was something that could not be taken away. And it was something that I could do for myself when I didn't feel like doing anything else. I didn't feel like, I didn't feel at the time, I think, and this is something that you grow back into, but I didn't feel like worthy of going out with my girlfriends, and I didn't feel like worthy of a pampering day or anything like that. Um, and so it almost made more sense to do something that was very, very hard for me physically, because emotionally it matched up. And so it was sort of like the perfect blend, of trying to make myself stronger physically while emotionally I felt very weak.
Yes, because the hope is that, okay, if I'm physically making myself stronger, the rest will catch up at some point.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And, I think that society talks a lot about, pushing yourself, right? Pushing to be your physical best, pushing to be the top of your physical game. And I think that looks different for everybody, but I do think that there's an element of that physical component when you're in a stressful time, a really, really hard time. There's no substitute for it. So whether it's going for a walk or going for a hike, or just managing what you can manage physically, that it's really important. And everybody has their own pace and everybody has their own,
Yes, it doesn't have to be running. Like you said, it can even be walking, hiking, or
yeah,
any activity. It can be going for a bike ride, but that physical outlet, I think, really gives you a safe place to sometimes have your quiet times and be wrapped up in your thoughts. And then there's other times where you're zoning out, playing, really angsty music.
yep.
Um, it gives you it gives you an outlet to go through all the different emotions, whether that day you want to be angry and listening to angry music, or it's a day where you just want to be quiet and, think everything through. I feel like, having a physical outlet and some kind of physical activity is just, it's a really good coping mechanism for whatever thing you're going through. I'm sure this past year, everybody could relate to it on some level, not going through a divorce, it just going through the pandemic itself. I'm sure a lot of people felt out of control.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think too, it's really for me, Ben, that there's really something to this idea that, what we feel, what we think, what is in our emotional makeup, our bodies know the score, right? Our bodies are in tune with that because I definitely think that a lot of ultra running has been cycling through the grief process just over and over and over again. You're out there and it can be any distance, right? It can be any amount of time. You're out there a lot of times by yourself with your own thoughts for a really, really long time. And so you sort of have those internal battles kind of over and over again. And you're also pushing yourself to keep going. You're also pushing through, the mental and emotional barrier of like, my knee hurts. I'm thirsty. I'm tired. I don't want to keep running. And through that, you sort of facilitate this, cathartic state in yourself. And then by the time you're done, yeah, you're exhausted, but also I feel like you feel so much more clearly who you are, what your purpose is. Your mind is more clear afterwards. And when you do have those moments where you're angry or somebody's like pushing your buttons or you're just having those memories come back up, you get better and better able to cope with it as time goes on.
And you grew up active, so running wasn't, it wasn't anything new to you. You grew up doing track, but coming out of your divorce, you were not, running, and you kind of came back into it through a local triathlon, correct?
Yeah, so I started running longer distances not very long ago actually. It's about 6 or 7 years ago. And at the time I was like, "Woo, half marathon. I'm going to do this and it's going to be the greatest and it's going to be the furthest ever." So I had done I think one half and one full at the time and then sort of just all of this other stuff started happening. I met my now ex-husband who ended up being sort of like a very not nice person.
Yes,
Was,
and you never want to say the wrong thing because again, like everybody, it's your fear of being judged, but you're a survivor of a crappy situation, and
it was not much fun. Yes. So for the listeners out there who are probably wondering what we're talking about, it was a domestic abuse situation. And so I got myself and my son out of that and was just literally like just trying to put the pieces back together.
completely starting over, which is
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
and as a woman, I think sometimes men don't understand how much scarier that is being a woman, especially in today's world, starting over on your own. It's extremely daunting.
It was very scary and it's very difficult for a lot of women to you feel to talk about you feel like for the longest time there's something that you did to deserve it and I'm here to tell you that you did not, and I'm also here to tell people like these are not things that happen to you. There's the ultra runner who I absolutely adore. Her name's Devin Yanko, who's a survivor of a pretty terrible situation herself. And she talks in a film by Billy Yang about the Western States 100 about her situation and how she's sort of lived her whole life with this idea of imposter syndrome, right? Which is that the good things that happen in your life are just luck and they're just flukes and you didn't do anything to deserve them, while the bad things that happen in your life are because of who you are and there's no changing it and you do deserve them and you don't. These are not just things that happen to you in this kind of situation. And even in a divorce, even no matter how amicable that divorce is, it's not something that just happens to you. It's a situation that someone else puts you in. These are things that someone else has done to you. So you are not at fault. This is not your fault. These are not just things that happen by chance. It's not just crappy luck. It's someone else taking away your choices. And for the longest time, that was a hard thing for me to understand. And so I just got to the point where, like, I was barely making it from day to day. I was working all the time, trying to take care of also taking care of my son as a single parent at the time, trying to remove the rest of this person from my life who had done all of these things. And so just feeling like there wasn't really much left of me, and I didn't recognize myself. And when I looked at myself, I didn't like myself, and I didn't have really a very strong sense of purpose. And so one of my friends at one point messaged me, and she was like, "Hey, my coworker and his wife are starting a triathlon and they need help. And I know that you run, right?" And I was like, "Well, so about that." Um, and she was like, "You should help me with this." And so I looked up this triathlon, and it was founded by my now friend JT Lindholm and his wife Adrian. Their daughter, little Avery, they called her Little A, passed away. She was 2.5 of childhood brain cancer. And something that would have just crushed most people. But the Lindholm family is an outdoors family. They're an Alaska family. JT comes from a long line of mountain runners who hold records still to this day, decades later. And so they decided to start triathlon in Avery's memory, and all the proceeds we're going to go to another family whose child had a childhood cancer. If that child passed away, then the money goes to a memorial for that child. And so I thought, oh my gosh, like I really wanted to do this. This is, I'm a new mom. My son is a baby. This is really like touching my heart. But the registration fee was like $100, which seemed like a lot.
Oh yeah, the racing world is very expensive for anyone listening.
Right?
It all starts out with just a pair of sneakers, and then it adds up.
Like a $20 5K, and then so at the time, like, and as you well know, when you're going through a divorce and you're pinching pennies, $100 is a lot of money. So I emailed him, and my heart was in my mouth, and I was like, this is really the first time that I have written down, like, I am struggling. Can you help me? And that's really
and it's hard to admit those things and ask for help.
And it was like this person, I had no idea who this person was. And it wasn't to like buy diapers for my child. It was, it was a race fee. And so I just wrote him, and I said, like, here's the situation. Is there any way that you can, give me a discount on this race fee? I'll volunteer for you instead to make up whatever it takes, but I would really like to do this race. And he wrote me back immediately and was like, here's a coupon code for half off. We're so happy to have you. And that was just so eye-opening that there was this.
Find out in the running community a lot of love, a lot of compassion, because every runner I meet has some kind of story or struggle or situation. So I find that, and I mean, I'm sure it's all people, but I've just found every runner to be very compassionate, always willing to listen to whatever you're going through on a long run, and just super understanding people.
Absolutely. And it's just that sense of community where you don't have to prove anything to anybody, right? Like, I'd never done this stinking triathlon before. I hate biking. It makes my butt hurt, and so here I was about to do like this 1/2-mile open water lake swim, a 12-mile trail bike, and a 4.5-mile trail run, and was like, can somebody help me? Can somebody help me lower this bike seat? I had no idea what I was doing. And nobody cared, like, it was just like, we're happy to have you. Thank you so much for signing up for this. And I think the grassroots nature of so many running events and so many running groups and like so many outdoor sports groups and endurance sports groups, that's what really makes this, I mean, you find those people like you're talking about, everybody has a story, but you would never know, until they open up to you, and they do, but they're just happy to be there. They're happy for you to be there. They're happy for you to finish. If you don't finish, they're there for you. And so I really just like tell people, and I finished it, but I finished dead last, but I finished, and everyone was still there. And JT came up at the end and just gave me this huge hug. And so I've been volunteering for them every year since. And I tell people all the time that that's the race that gave me my life back, because it gave me a goal and it gave me a sense of purpose. And nobody was like, you can't do this, you're going to fail, for the first time in who knows how long, right? Because like my marriage was not that fantastic, obviously. So all I'd been hearing for a really long time was like how much I sucked.
Yeah, and what you aren't and what you're not capable
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, right. And how you're not measuring up and how you don't look a certain way and you don't, and I think that's the other thing that I love about this community is, you look at endurance sports and this idea of like the way that somebody looks denoting what they can do gets
Oh
blown out
no.
of the water.
Oh yeah. People of all shapes and sizes will surprise the heck out of you. That is one thing like running taught me is to never judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Because it really does not speak to somebody's ability based on like height, weight, things like that. There are talented people of all shapes and sizes. And also, runners do not give an F about what you look like.
No, they not. I have been outrun both in speed and distance by more 65-year-old men than I even can count. So there's that. And it doesn't matter. It was never a question of whether there was going to be somebody there at the finish line for me. And so, getting into a sport where you have that support no matter what is phenomenal because when you come from a place where, like you don't know if the person you're supposed to spend the rest of your life with is even going to be home when you walk in the door, like that was very impactful for me. So,
Yeah, I will say my running friends are probably the most supportive people around. And even the ones like that you might not see for a few months, like
oh yeah,
they'll add, they're happy to catch up with you and they celebrate your successes. And then if you happen to have a bad race, they're there to tell you not to worry about it, shake it off. And it's just a different type of community. They really are supportive, non-judgmental, and very motivating and uplifting, especially. And so during tougher times in life, that's when you really need those people. And so that's why I just find running to be such a good outlet for any kind of difficult time in life. And again, you don't have to be a fast runner. Heck, you don't even have to run the whole course. You can be walking it. They're happy to have you there.
it is very inclusive. And I think for, like you said, for women in particular, it's getting more so by the day. And we do have that strong representation and all different kinds of representation, from the Courtney DeWalters of the world, and she wears like nothing but like baggy basketball shorts, no short shorts for her. And there's one of my favorites. A lot of people really, really love Myrna Valerio, who is a woman of color who is an ultra runner, a spokesperson. She's super, super awesome, and she's really wonderful at just making people understand that celebrating what your body can do is more important than how it looks. I mean, I think that's really
Yes. And I came from a situation where looks were crucially important, and that became my only value. And that's why I love running so much, because they really don't care what you're wearing on race day. They don't care if you have makeup on or not. They don't care at all. You're there to run and to support one another, and that's what matters. Everything on the inside is what matters.
they can't care because at some point if you have like a crew and running friends and like a running family, they will probably see you cry. They will probably see you blow snot rocket. They will probably see you vomit. Let's just be
Uh,
honest with
they'll
ourselves.
probably see you have a bathroom emergency.
Yeah, you will probably change in front of them more times than you have ever changed in front of anybody in your entire life. And they will also see you hork down some food like no other. So,
That is really true. They really will see you at some of your most ugly moments,
oh yeah.
and they get it because they have them too. But yeah, they really do see you at your worst. I
Oh
mean, in the best way possible. But I mean, you could be crying because you're in pain, or crying because you're happy. You're sweaty. You're gross. You stink.
yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I felt bad for some of my training partners, because I'm like, oh my god, I probably stink so bad right now, and yeah, they do too. So nobody cares.
Nobody can tell. Yeah, it's not really you. Yeah, that's you're with them for extended periods of time and they're stuck with you and you're like whining. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's,
And that's the beautiful thing about running, though. It really is like those you form a bond because you're kind of with each other through your best and worst moments. Worse in the sense that you're, fighting through the same difficult challenge, but it's also your best moment because you're persevering through something. So you build a bond with these people, and like you said, it's very inclusive, and that's a nice thing about the running world, especially in today's climate. I think it just becomes more and more inclusive with every year that passes, and that's kind of nice to see in a world that's not always the greatest place.
Yeah, totally. And I think, again, with the issue of the pandemic, that there are just more people trying it. There are more people trying running. There are more people trying to go outside who may not have thought of it before, or, it just didn't appeal to them before, but it's sort of one of the only places you can go. It's like one of the only things you can do. And so I also think, and this is, like in running circles, especially like the ultra running community, people are like, oh my God, I'm so ready for in-person races again. I'm so over virtual, but and I get it, because we all want to see our friends and we all want that sense of camaraderie, and we all want to get our like post-race beer and snacks in person. But like the virtual running events, I think like more people are trying them and more people are completing endurance events than ever.
Yeah,
Because
I do think it opened up the world to a lot of people that were probably scared, like nervous to go to some of these in-person races because it is intimidating,
totally.
especially like when you're around people that are really competitive. It can be intimidating. So that is a really good point. It probably did open up the running world to people that were maybe a little shy to come to in-person races, and hopefully they will now. I didn't love the competitive virtual races. Like I just couldn't get into them, I think, because the adrenaline wasn't there. However, I liked the virtual challenges. We both did the great virtual race across Tennessee. Now, while I say I loved it, I mean, I loved the aspect of it, but by the end, I think we were all done with it. It was,
I was so over it. I was so over it.
we were
Oh,
basically virtually all racing the distance across Tennessee, a little over 1,000 kilometers, and it was over the course of 4 months. When you did the math, it evened out to like 35 some odd miles a week, so which is like 5 miles or 5 point something miles a day. Didn't sound that bad in the beginning. After a couple months, it was trying, and like you just felt like you were constantly trying to stay ahead or at least on track, because you had 4 months to finish it. And most of us during training cycles have an easy week where we cut back our mileage. There was no opportunity with that. Or if you did get sick, or I believe I had surgery for during the middle of it, so I had to take a couple weeks off. So if you fall behind, you're like that anxiety to catch up. So I think by the
it
end we
was
were all done with
excruciating.
it. Yeah, you have like you're over it.
I was so done running when I did not feel like running. I was just like, I'm never doing this again. If I don't feel like it, then I'm not leaving my house. Because yeah, like by the end of it, you're like watching this tracker. It was like 635 miles total or something like that. And it's like it like wasn't moving. And
Yeah,
I was
you checked
so
your progress every day to log your miles, and it just felt like you were not getting anywhere. I mean, and then you would see there. So, I mean, there were about 18,000 of us in this race. It was all over the world, and it was all virtual. So it was really neat in that aspect. It was great community, and it was great to see all these different people running all over the world, sharing awesome stories. But it was a little disheartening when you go in to log your miles, and we're just normal runners, and you see those elite ultra runners like in the top 10 that finished the whole damn race that was meant to be over the course of 4 months. They finished it in a week, 2 weeks, and you're like, excuse me?
And
Like,
then they turned
how?
around and went back the other way. I'm like, do you guys have jobs?
That's what I was wondering. And I mean, they
Is
could
this
be.
your job? Yeah.
That's what I wondered. I'm like, I'm guessing some of them were either laid off during the pandemic, or some of them were of age to be retired, which is like always
Yeah.
the amazing thing to see somebody that's more than double your age running more than you. That's
Right?
humbling.
And I mean, it was amazing to see like all the
It is.
photos.
Yeah, we are very happy for you. Don't get me wrong. But on the inside, we were like, oh man.
Well, let me just tell you how when they did it again in 2021, I was like, nope.
Nope.
I
And we
did.
talked about this last week. My dad and I were debating, and we finally decided over the weekend, nope, we're not doing it. Because there's some in-person races coming back. So we're like, we're going to focus on
Yeah.
those and train for those and get competitive again. I don't want to do it again. I don't want to do the
No,
virtual race again.
I don't think I could. I don't think I could force myself. But then again, here I am like forcing myself to train like for other things. So maybe
I
it's
think we just need something new. You know, it was like a once in a lifetime thing. Again, it was held by Lazarus
Lazarus Lake,
the
correct?
king of the Berkeley marathons. He's a legend, and that's why I did it, because I felt like it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. You know, this pandemic is again, hopefully, a once in a lifetime thing, and it just felt like such a neat thing to be a part of. But I'm good. I did
But
it once.
I
I'm
did it
happy
one
with
last
it.
race, and I'm good. Yes, we did the
Yeah.
Orig. We did the OG GRAT.
Yes, we're part of the original crew,
We
but
don't need to do it again.
and I think it speaks again to, I think probably a lot of people in that group used this running event as a way to cope with a difficult time in the world. And again, it just, running can be so therapeutic, because I know tons of people in that group would sharing their stories of, you know, battling addictions or dealing with loss and grief, or injuries or illnesses. There was a Facebook group, and I would love checking in there every day. And I got inspired by reading all these stories. But again, I think so many people in there were there for the same reason. We needed something to hold on to and to get us through a really weird year. And those 4 months kind of gave us that outlet.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I hope that virtual races don't die, even though the pandemic is kind of maybe calming down a little bit over time, I hope they don't die, because I think that it's a great opportunity for, those people who are just starting to find their way, and just starting to decide whether or not they want to run and how they want to run, to work those things out. And it's a great platform,
Yeah,
definitely.
honestly, I hadn't been a fan of them, and now like you bringing that up makes me realize what a good opportunity it is for people that just might be a little shy about running or curious about it, to dip their toes into it in a way where they feel comfortable at home or with, you know, their spouse or their kids, you know, doing a virtual 5K together. Definitely do it. It's a great way to introduce yourself to it. And then hopefully, you know, come join the live ones when they're, you know, when it's safe again. I think we're slowly getting there. But I kind of changes my opinion on them. Because I mean, the aspect of, you know, you still get the t-shirt, the medal, and I mean, you have to log it and prove it. So you're doing it. I think, you know, it's definitely a great way to bring people into the running community, because like you said, it's very inclusive.
I agree.
Um,
I do miss the in-person finish line though.
well, that's and you know, especially for you doing ultras, the in-person crew.
Yeah, I probably would have been marooned without the in-person crew. The in-person crew is pretty important.
Yes, in the world of ultras, definitely. You know, you need fuel, you need hydration, and there's a rule though, right, with ultras about how they can assist you. Is that how it goes?
It depends on the race. If it's a self-supported race, you cannot accept things from people outside of your own person, but it just depends. It depends on the race format. I mean, pretty much no matter what you do, you're going to need someone to drive your tired, partially crippled self home afterwards. So
Oh well, that's my grandfather. He is
there
like
you
our he shuttles me and my dad around. Yeah, he's always the support system.
go. As long as you have the post-race chauffeur, you're usually all right.
Now, for anybody that wants to reach out to you with questions about ultra running, they can reach out to you on Instagram.
I do have an Instagram, yes, Pucky Pie Photography, PUCKYPIE Photography, or you can find me on Facebook. I'm happy to answer any questions there too.
Yes, and we'll include all her links beneath the YouTube video. And actually, check out her photography. I'm looking at it right now. Gorgeous photos, especially where you live. I can definitely see some of the appeal. I don't like to be cold, but I can see the appeal of how gorgeous it would be to do some running there.
You can always just come up and stand outside long enough to snap an Insta-worthy photo and then go back in.
Yeah, that would be me.
It's totally legit.
So again, you can reach Michele Harmeling on Facebook or on Instagram, Pucky Pie Photography, and I will include all the links beneath the YouTube video. Thank you for giving us not one, but two episodes of all kinds of fun knowledge, especially ultra running knowledge for anybody that's curious about it, like myself, foraging, and just using running as an overall coping method if you're going through anything difficult in your life. It's a great, outlet to work through your emotions. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.